headline of every single newspaper, A&E delays, killing up to 500 patients a week. Now, that is a really stark headline. It does state in this article here in the Times that they believe it's somewhere between 300 and 500 people. It's an appalling number, and I think this only highlights further the trouble the NHS is in, and it's all parts of the NHS. If you look at the problems you've got with ambulances coming through, with people being treated in corridors, and at the other end of this, I think the social care issues are really, really now pushed to the fore. If people cannot get out of those beds and into a care home or other premises to support them, then they're sitting in hospitals taking up beds. Something has to be done. I don't know what that something is, and I really worry that we start this knee-jerk reaction and calling things a national crisis and calling for all sorts of vague interventions with no real plan as to how we solve this in the long run.
Yeah, it just has made me feel like I really hope none of my loved ones need to go into the hospital anytime soon. I've been nagging my parents to make sure they're up to date on their flu vaccines, everything else, just stay away from trouble, because that's the state of the NHS, particularly A&E at the moment. And I think it's the president of the Society of Acute Medicine saying that at the moment the NHS is worse than at the peak of COVID.
Yeah, that is an appalling statement, and it's an appalling headline to be in every single newspaper today. I wonder how many people would have died anyway, which is quite an interesting thought.
Well, he was saying the 500 are because of delays. These 500 a week.
So that's extra, is it?
Yes, yeah. This was
well, it is terrifying then.
Yeah. A worrying state of affairs indeed. But as you say, Claire, no obvious solution. I mean, people all going to blame the government, aren't they, for not sorting out the strikes and retaining staff. But if they do come out with this inflation-busting request that nurses, for example, are coming out with, who's going to foot the bill?
Well, I think there is a real problem. And how much money can you realistically keep pouring into the NHS as an institution if it is not working? It is one of the largest pots of money that go into the NHS. So if that's not enough, how much is ever going to be enough? And I worry that we're not looking at things like GP services. I know that people in my area still struggle to get any kind of appointment, whether it be a telephone appointment or even the e-consult online system, which is broken. So I think that just pouring money into it doesn't work. You need to actually now start to look at how you fix it. If you have to bring in the private sector, then so be it. We have to have that conversation.
I would wonder whether we shouldn't start, I've said this on this programme before, paying, you know, for whatever we went. I mean, last year I had a new knee put in and I had a new valve put into my heart, and I could have afforded to pay a little. I'm not saying, you know, the huge amounts that if you go with private health care, they charge. I mean, I think this knee would have cost something like £20,000 and also the heart. But I think, you know, if one could afford to have paid a fraction of that, it would help perhaps.
But what about a small fee for regular GP appointments? Most people would probably pay for a small fee, £10 or £15.
Certainly for missing one.
If they can afford it, just to be able to get...
I agree, that's terrifying.
Yeah, and I think people are coming round now more to that, as long as it doesn't exclude those people who physically cannot afford to do so. But you look at other healthcare systems within Europe, for example, our nearest neighbours, they do have that kind of system. So if you can pay, then I think you should now perhaps put into that system.
Yeah, France does it, doesn't it? Very successfully.
And in Australia, they do exactly what you're talking about. There's this sense of conscience. And if you can afford, for example, to pay for your own childbirth costs, then you're encouraged to do so to relieve the pressure on the state. It's a sort of a matter of conscience. But I suppose politically that would be disastrous for the Conservatives, who would say we're once again squeezing the middle classes.
But I think it's any political party, if I'm perfectly honest. Nobody wants to touch the sacred cow that is the NHS.
No, you're right.
It's going to go badly with voters.